times. Can we have the presentation on? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for placing trust with us. I'm supposed to motivate you, but what am I supposed to motivate you for? The objective of the presentation is to motivate us to think together. There are quite longish coffee breaks, so I want to motivate you to discuss during the break, to think about our perception of career or work counseling in the context of the people that we work with, and whether these needs have been interiorized, or we might have the risk of unconscious confidence, because I don't know that I don't know. Shall I do something or rather not? Let me present myself. I work at the Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznan, and I work at primary school as a professional counselor. I want to say that I have the contact with reality. Sometimes you've got the thinking that if somebody works at the university, you've got crazy and loony ideas. My loony ideas are confronted with everyday reality. So let's think about what I'm supposed to do in the context of two questions. And these are broad scope questions, but the broad scope questions are the pivot for more detailed observations of mine. So uncertainty category, what do we refer it to? Because this is a keyword that it has been on everybody's lips, used in different contexts. So let's have a more operational context of this, because this is the context of us being professional counselors. We live and work in uncertainty and for uncertainty conditions. So this is the question that triggers another question. What is this counseling for? Which is the direction? What are we supposed to do? And the second question is the basic question that pertains to my presentation. Can you manage your professional career at all? Because we've been quite optimistic in our assumptions that this is manageable. But the question is, how many certain factors are there, and how many factors are uncertain? And what are we supposed to do if there are many uncertain factors? And these are the two questions that we want to find the answer for. The first thing, the category of uncertainty. When I was getting ready for my presentation, I thought that uncertainty describes everything. Hardly do we know what we are supposed to do, and uncertainty relates to all spheres of life. In the context of the world and the fate, no need to find examples, because examples are at your fingertips. I'm not going to speak about obvious things, but we know what happened in the labor market during pandemics. We know the consequences of war in Ukraine at our schools. This is more or less foreseeable situations. We didn't know how to behave. We have two categories which are very important for us that I want to focus. Uncertainty. This is a broad scope one, and decision question. Look and see. Career or work counseling, no matter what educational level we are in, be it kids, youth, or adults. These are situations that are designed to give food for thought before making an informed decision. So in a traditional, old type of counseling thinking, know yourself and align your job opportunities to it. I believe that we have departed from this kind of thinking. How are they supposed to make a decision if they do not know the conditions? What I see in my counseling, these are not professional knowledge or the problems with writing CV or prospering for information. This is not this kind of problem. They are afraid of making an actual decision because a choice means giving up on something else, and giving up on something is painful. And there is a plethora of offers. And there are people who demonstrate the indifference of surplus. I cannot do anything because there are too many offers. If I choose one, others might be the chances that I have lost. So it's better not to choose anything rather than choose anything and feel sorry. We know the mechanisms. These are life mechanisms. Let's start with the labor market. I'm not going to speak about VUCA. 1987, the acronym that was created by the American army that is popular in every corner of the world. They were much ahead because they didn't know back then what the pandemics would do with the world. But when you follow different publications, when you think about the context about the labor market, there is yet another acronym. Some people say it's sucks because Bani is equivalent of Polish sucks. Brittle is the English word that is the first letter. A, anxious, so anxiety, that is introduced. Non-linear is another letter. And the last I is incomprehensible, something you cannot possibly comprehend. These are new adjectives that describe the world we are in. VUCA was diagnosis. Bani spurs you for action. So we can see that's the way it is. But what does it mean for us, for educators, for masters, counselors? For me, the labor counselor, it means I am supposed to prepare the pupils, the 7th and 8th graders. These might be young people in different life situations. These might be adults. If the world is brittle, unstable, the question is, what do they need? If they are afraid of the world, what do they need to be afraid, to be able to combat this world? If this is non-linear, mosaic, some theorists say, what do they need to cope with that? Incomprehensible. So how to decipher different contexts? Look, this smashes traditional thinking about counseling work. You cannot simply fit one-to-one. Become familiar with your preferences and whatever you like, we'll find a job for you and full thrust ahead. It's different today, or it's very different, depending on business sector and context you're in. And what comes last? Crises, the externalities that model whatever is happening, and this is something we don't know. The world is truly surprising. Sometimes it's pretty scary to switch on a telly in the morning. Hardly do we know what the world is going to surprise us. For me, for a counselor, this is information. My pupils need competences to cope with crisis situations or to manage crises. Look, crisis management, well, it has been harnessed a long time ago. Young managers learn how to manage crisis in organization, but this is the time to help pupils how to manage their own private crises, what to do when there is a huge disaster, fire, flood, and we don't know what to do with the situation. These are our challenges. This is our context. It translates to whatever we do in professional counseling. And here are 3 suggestions for you, and I hope they are motivating. They give you food for thought. The first concept, professional capital. Harry Griffiths full on theory that I like very much. It's very easy and inspirational. That makes you act and advise. Professional capital is not a summary function of 3 capitals. Individual capital, so whatever I have, whatever I've worked out. Social capital, relations, the people you know. And one more capital. Do you have an idea what that capital might be? Decision-making capital. They say there are people who've got everything. They are the lucky ones, wise, well-educated, well-behaved, supported by parents and local milieux. And what do? They do virtually nothing. Although they have resources, they got stuck. I'm not going to speak about these generation narratives. In every generation, we can find people who, despite having resources, they do not want to act. Is this a problem for a counselor or rather for a psychologist? I'm not going to look for the answer to this question, but I want to highlight a problem. It's not like us giving them everything. They'll be supported and counseled. They need to have this decision-making capital. I'm not afraid of taking risks. I'm not afraid of making mistakes. I remember being told when somebody has given up university course in the third year, he had chosen it in the wrong way. No, he had chosen the best possible way with everything they had at that time. But it was not a mistake. It was a correction time, the change time that they have the right for. So this is the decision-making process. Do I want to go full thrust into things that is not constructive for me, or do I have that chance for a change? And I told you about this indifference related to surplus. It can be learned from an inability or social behaviors. You know, it's not right to do things. This can be modeled by a school, by social patterns. But there are people, well, it's not a good thing to stop studying, to change jobs, or it's silly. Sometimes you can hear it's stupid to switch jobs and give up on a better paid job. Why? If less paid job is not the one that kills me, that smashes my private life, dosh may not be the thing that I am into. So this is the question. Am I courageous enough to make decisions, or should I be like a paper boat that follows the stream and I'm carried wherever the tides go? I'll be moaning and groaning, saying, it's not my cup of tea, but I'm not going to do anything. And the last thing, enhancement of proactive attitude. So we are not responsible for everything. I know who I'm talking to, but you have been working in the educational system. You've seen the situation when parents say, tell me what kind of school he or she is supposed to go. I'm not going to do that. Being myself a counselor, I'm not going to give you this kind of information. I'm going to show you the source of information. So this is the question. We already do the job for the people we work with, or where is the demarcation line between counseling? If I give them too much, I stop them being proactive. I tell them, go and look, try to find. If a student brings in the information from iffy sources, there is another point for analysis, critical analysis of the sources of information. This is the counseling job sphere for me. But it is very important not to phase out them being active, and on the other hand, to be able to support it so that the people that I cooperate with are self-dependent in the decision-making process and self-dependent in managing different things that they can manage on their own. I am quite ruthless here. If a pupil can do something on their own, I'm not going to do that instead of them. If a parent can do something on their own, I'm not going to do that either. I can show them where to find the information, but I'm not going to find the information for them. Why? Because I don't want to teach them to be different. If somebody is bringing something on a silver plate, why am I supposed to do anything like this? So this is nurturing the learned helplessness. So how do you understand the professional career that I want to manage? I want to suggest two lines of thinking when it comes to the career management. One is much closer to me, and the other one not so much. It is important to think about professional career as a way, not as a result. Somebody's been successful in their professional career, so they've reached a place other people have not, or stand no chance to reach. So if somebody is the boss of all bosses, it means that they are successful in their professional career. If somebody holds a position, they are successful. In the VUCA times, these careers are quite rickety, I'd say. You are successful today, you are no longer successful tomorrow. So let me look at these themes. 3 metaphors of success. These are the metaphors that I dislike in the capacity of a counselor, because this is an impediment to my work. First, the steps up to career, to success. The higher the better is the question. The higher is the higher, not necessarily the better. This is the line of thinking, like, I need to climb up the career ladder. But we have also vertical and horizontal careers, and in vertical ones there is no stairs. So I'm a manager, a director tomorrow, CEO the day after tomorrow, and then I need to think up what to put on my business card again. And you think, the higher, the further I am in my career. What happens if I reach the top then? Sometimes you suffer a crisis, because if I reach the goal and the goal made me act, what happens next? Working with adults, it happens very often because they've reached the top and they discover that, what am I supposed to do there? To stay there? To climb down and try again to find some other peak? Lots of questions. The second metaphor, a race. Some people say a rat race. The faster the better. The first the better. The first is the first, not necessarily the better. I'm going to tell you about the problem that is described as overeducation. We have too much to what we need. I don't know those who graduated from 4 university lines when they are compared with the one that graduated from line of studies when just one is enough. Why is there a competitive advantage if in this context this is not necessary? Quite possible, but depends what I want to pay them for.
Thirdly, that we always have to hit the target, the very middle. Sometimes things have to be ideal and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can hit a 9 and not a 10, and that's good enough. We all remember scenes from school where the teacher's handing back the tests. A kid got 70% and he's crying. Why are you crying? Well, I didn't get over 90. So without stigmatizing anybody, the 70% might be quite good for that particular student, and yet they're not able to enjoy the fact that they are good enough. And now 3 more metaphors that I would like to introduce you to in terms of thinking about careers. First of all, the kaleidoscope. We all played with kaleidoscopes when we were children. Where a single movement might completely change the picture. I don't want to equate movement with crisis, but it may be that one small virus comes along and wrecks everything for us, shakes things up, and the whole picture of reality changes. So now, if I think of the mosaic quality of careers in today's world, what do I need to function effectively in that mosaic world? There's no certainty, there's change. And these changes are frequently not dependent on me, but external, like a virus coming along and changing, shifting the whole picture. Another metaphor is the metaphor of the road. So now if you look at these metaphors in your heads, it opens up a huge space for reflection. Different types of surfaces, road signs, roundabouts, highways, and so on. Various themes that we can draw on to think of a career. We might be going directly to our destination, or we might be stuck in traffic, and that's what life is like. It's all the pauses when things are put on hold because somebody has planned layoffs, and we have to redirect our efforts. But when I think of a road, I ask myself who determines, who sets the route, and who sets up the road signs. Maybe I have limiting beliefs. So I think that's a very fitting metaphor. And a third metaphor that has to do directly with the subject of my presentation. It's a metaphor that speaks of a career as a project. And since projects are managed, as all those who plan projects know well, projects are a thing to be managed. But I can design a project, but a project only makes sense insofar as it's directed towards a goal. So I have to ask myself, what is my goal? What do I want out of my career? If I set myself a goal, I have to ask myself what I want. But if I don't have a goal, that makes things difficult. An example from yesterday, I worked with a grade 3 high school student who's thinking of university. I asked her about her goal, and she said to get into university, but that's not a goal. University is a stage, a tool to pursue further goals. So reflect on a goal that you will only define in the future if you can attain that via different routes, or what kind of university studies will get you where you want to be. Or an elementary school example, the boys want to go into uniformed high schools. They want to be policemen or military men. But I tell them, well, you can work for the police as a chemist, an IT guy, or a psychologist. Do you want to go in with no experience, or do you want to go in with skills and a range of competences? This is project management in action. With regard to adults, we need to ask, what do you want now? What do you want at this stage of your path? These questions often evoke emotional reactions. They are difficult questions because they indicate that we have to change something that was once important to us, and this is working with values, not just redefining competences or rehashing competences, but redefining or defining values. So now I'm moving on to the counseling themes. Before we can manage a career, we need to plan one. I included a picture of some bricks and building equipment on purpose. The question is, what do our students build their career plans on in elementary school, which is when it all starts? I know there are family threads. The parents have their aspirations, goals, and dreams for the children, but what we do in school, I often protest against theories of personality traits where we determine one's interests and then we choose the relevant careers. The young people in grades 7 and 8, they are adolescents. I don't know if you still have the same interests as you did back when you were in grade 7 or 8. Maybe, maybe not. But for most of these kids, their interests change. So asking them to identify their interests and to pick a career on that basis, these are theories that go back 50 years. We are at a different point now. We have a different theoretical and methodical research to back up new ways of doing this. So if I want to prepare my students to be independent in their professional lives in the future, I need to give them an ability to read the labor market, the ability to plan and to think critically. So here I'm talking about career management competences. So the first question is, are these people supposed to be the actor or the author of their careers? If the actor or agent, then it's the labor market narrative, because then we'll show them all the lists and employer requirements and expectations and tell them to be like this, to please their future employers. But that's not what I tell them. On the labor market, you can be an employee, an employer, and you can also definitely be a colleague. And these are three roles that you need to prepare for. So now this message centered on the labor market needs. This is a neoliberal way of thinking where we prepare cogs for a future machine. I'm not negating the needs of the labor market, but I am a teacher, an educator. I have an educational soul, and I don't want my students to be treated like cogs in a system. They can truly be the authors of their own biographies, and their education and job will be part of those biographies. Some people say this is utopian, but for the moment, I think it's the way to go. The second aspect is lifelong learning, LLL. So when we speak of career counseling, we also speak of LLG, lifelong guidance. There used to be offers for adults in unemployment offices, but right now when we speak of LLG, we know that people at different stages of their professional lives do need support, especially support in terms of coming up with what's next. It's not just about requalifying. It may be about reconciling your working life with your private life, work-life balance. There's also retirement. These adults are often people with great potential, great motivation, the ability and health to work, and they're told, well, go off and retire. So it's also a matter of taking care of them when they still want to keep working, when they don't want to be inactive and sit on a couch. This is also a theme, a subject for guidance counselors. So LLG basically says, well, from preschool to seniorhood. And the third aspect, we may speak of career management, but what I'm encouraging you to do is to think of strategic career management. What is the difference? Well, management is process management, but strategic management is process management within the context of an environment. If I know that my career environment is highly volatile and changeable, I need to think of how to manage this. And the simplest way to think about this is to think of domains. The distribution of resources and synergy. I don't have time to develop these things, but it's a way of thinking of career management that is extremely useful in terms of method, as a method. And I'll give you an example to show you how to go about this. So what I've said so far was a kind of theoretical introduction, perhaps a bit long-winded, but in my view necessary. And now what I want to show you is a number of methodical solutions, i.e. what we can do in our work with every age group. The first model, quite simplistic, but it sets the stage for our thinking. The competence pyramid, sometimes there are 3, sometimes 4 levels. I like working with 4 levels. At the very bottom, we have our foundational competences, ICT, English, reading, writing, counting, the basics. The second level are social skills. I know who I'm talking to, so I won't elaborate on this. The third level are professional skills. So it matters when, where, and from whom we learn. It matters who models our career development. So if since I'm from Poznan, let me give a local example. I think it matters whether a student is training to be a mechanic at a Volkswagen school or at his uncle's workshop. I'm not judging where the student will learn more, but definitely the experience will be different. At the level of professional skills, we need to reflect exactly where and from whom we want to learn, not just in formal education, but also in non-formal education. And I'm definitely talking about market qualifications. This is a space that turns over many things. At the very top is the cherry on the cake, and this is the cutting edge competence, or the thing that sets you apart from others. If you have a supportive home, you went to a good school, you're set for life. A professional competence is grounded in soft skills. And note, when we go to an expert, we don't know anything about the subject. We're not able to assess to what extent this specialist or expert is professional. We often judge him or her on his or her soft skills, whether he was supportive, caring, kind, etc. So we have various types of schools, various types of qualification agencies. But the competence that sets me apart is something that I am personally responsible for. So, for instance, we have a lot of teachers. We have a lot of career counselors, school counselors. So what could set me apart as a school career counselor? What types of traits could set me apart? Well, maybe passion, but maybe something like knowing sign language. Just think, how many counselors are there who are able to use sign language? Or perhaps if I spoke Ukrainian, that would set me apart nowadays. So this special skill is something that weaves into strategic management. I can quickly obtain a new skill that would position me and give me an advantage in my field. It doesn't have to be something huge or special. It may be something that I need just to take the next step forward. Another thing are employability skills. It sounds better in English, although it's still many syllables. So employability is a personal feature. It's not a feature of the market. It's a feature of the person. So if I want to prepare my student to function on the market, I should reinforce his or her employability. Once more, a very simple model: cognitive, methodical, and social. These are all operationalized. And I'll show you how we use these skills in practice. Social skills, that's obvious. Those are the soft skills that I spoke of. But pay attention to methodical skills, the ability to learn. However, in the case of adults, it's often also the ability to unlearn. In andragogics, it's easier to teach an adult rather than to have them unlearn something that they invested themselves and invested money in. And now a new system may be in place and they have to unlearn their previous skills. They might ask, what's wrong with my skills? Well, they're not relevant anymore, and that often hurts. So in terms of methodology skills, that's often the problem. There's also the issue of creativity. Creativity used to be talked about as a kind of demigod, and those times are slowly passing, because we don't just need creatives, we also need analyticals. I attended the Adult Education Forum, and a speaker spoke quite critically of creativity in the labor market context. Creativity isn't always an advantage. There are situations where creativity is an obstacle. I didn't think of creative accounting, but that might be a good example. Another thing are competence, career management competences. A lot of examples in the literature. So what do we need to manage our professional career over our lifetime? 5 elements. Personal effectiveness. It's not about doing, but getting things done. So I'm not interested in how much time it takes you. It needs to get done. The more effective you are, the less time it takes. So the point is not just to keep busy, but to get things done. Personal relationship management. In the workplace, this might activate synergy or prove an obstacle. Searching for work and access to learning. I also work with parents at my school. I think most of them have outdated knowledge. If I know that I don't know, well, that's no good, because I cut myself off from opportunities if I don't know about them. Managing your life and work, that's work-life balance. Work is an extremely important part of life, but it's still a part. And maybe there's a stage in my life where I want to make money, I want to buy goods, but maybe at another stage I want to be there for my kid. These things change over a lifetime. And 5, understanding the world. Just having a good general idea of how things work. So these are some themes to think about. These are areas of professional development. Regardless of what job we do, it applies to all jobs. Only 3. Intrapersonal, interpersonal, and extrapersonal. I'll start with extrapersonal. These are tools. If I'm a hairdresser, I know how to cut hair, apply paint. So we like going to these trainings because they give us specific tools, they give us certification, we get materials, it's very specific. At school, for instance, we like interactive method training. This is that sphere, and it's very much needed. We then have interpersonal.
And the interpersonal skill conditions your behavior on the job. I might be a well-educated educator, but does that mean that I am able to develop relations with the people that I work with? Not necessarily the case. These are the trainings that we dislike a lot because they touch us as humans. Let me share an example with you. Interpersonal communications lectures are very safe, but let's try to discuss it amongst teachers. We practice things on ourselves. You can feel the resistance. Why? Because it's about me, not external sphere, that is the toolbox that we have. But this is the sphere that conditions me being a counsellor, which is more important than me knowing what is the unemployment rate at the moment in Poland. And intrapersonal sphere, number 1 on the beamer, is my perception of the sense of the work that I do. If I have deficiency here, it's a highway leading you towards burnout. If it does not stir me that much, it doesn't mean passion. But if I dislike it, or I enter school and I say, gosh, it's so nice, it's so quiet, because it's July and August, this is the thing for you to think over, because this might bring me down in the context of professional burnout, because there are factors that accelerate the burnout and there are the ones that retard the burnout. For me, it is important when somebody brings in their crisis, when somebody says stay on the job or not, to check whether they have these competences, whether they're able to use this interactive board. Pissed off with that, just teach them. But sometimes they may not be able to deal with the relations with parents or kids. They might be an excellent teacher of physics, biology, or English, but they cannot cope with their social skill. But sometimes it happens that they have no feeling of sense. If there is no feeling of sense, you either find it or dash off. Another thing, I'm nearing the end of my presentation. This is the attitude kind of thinking. I attach great attention to that, especially when we talk to people who work in the education system, I mean schools. And well, this is the lesson for me too, because sometimes I see it, because somebody's attitude towards something or somebody is recognized by behavioral component, by doing or not doing something. it is like, describing an iceberg, seeing what is above the water level. If I shape proactive attitudes to your own career, being myself a counselor, I need to invest into cognitive component, knowledge, an effective one. So recognize their hopes, plans, values, aspirations. Let me put it this way. 7th graders and 8th graders, I do knowledge test. To make it humanitarian, they do it in pairs or in threes, not to make it too schooly. But they need to learn if they know. Hardly can you imagine that somebody makes a decision. So there is this behavioral component on the basis what seems, on the basis of the effective one. This should be knowledge-based. This is another trace to think how to manage your own stance towards your career. So these are 3 areas, behavioral, affective, and cognitive. And to wrap up, if we think about the labor market that is not predictable, there are 2 categories, right and adjust. The first one, qualifications. The one associated with adjustment is about my relations, how I operate on the job. Sometimes you employ somebody who's less qualified, but they are more apt, put in inverted commas. This aptitude, it means fitting, that we are able to teach them, and we know that we would like to meet this person and stay with them for 8 hours every day. It doesn't matter that they may not know something, but we'll teach them. Qualifications and competences, I don't know what I'm speaking to. And employability is yet another thing. Let's increase their chances in the labor market in the 3 roles: employer, employee, collaborator. And the content that is prerequisite is integrated qualification system. They need to have knowledge about this, because this is going to produce results in the course of the career. They can modify it through different qualifications and register mergers happening. It's worth looking into it on an ongoing basis, and the things that we need to pay attention to: precarious jobs and the situations when people have been educated, they have great aspirations, and they bang against the wall. This is the topic for another presentation. And learning outcome confirmation, one of the forms of university enrollment. Few people know that, despite the fact that it has been outlined in the Act. And learning effects recognition, no matter what I'm learning, you need to check whether I can do things. So there's a lot for us to do. We might play different roles and wear different hats being counselors, because a counselor is, kind of collective attitude. We can be the one that builds bridges. You can be creative interpreter, but you should be a facilitator. You need to enhance the decision-making process. That is the process of finding information. So there is a lot for us to do, and I hope that you feel motivated now. Thank you very much.